Between the Lines would like to thank Protection Strategies Incorporated for sponsoring tonight's program. One of our country's leading providers of integrated security services, including operational security, training, testing, and evaluation. Clients of PSI include the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the Department of Energy.
Ryan Spitzer, for Circuit Court Judge, is also sponsoring tonight's program. Ryan is a prosecutor and Army medic for 6 years and a lifetime Tennessean. A graduate of Vanderbilt Law School, Ryan is dedicated to serving the citizens of Anderson County.
Welcome to our first edition, our first show, Between the Lines. Every Thursday night at 7 o'clock, we'll have a different guest, and we'll talk about issues that might not be covered in the national or state media. What are those inner issues that we don't hear about? One-on-one dialogues, comfortable stuff, just sitting around the Cracker Barrel, if you want to use that for an excuse, et cetera, et cetera. And no better way to start that show. I'm Alan Beauchamp. I want to thank Ryan Spitzer for sponsoring our shows in July. And no better way to start it than with our good friend, Congressman Chuck Fleischmann, who represents every show that we cover. Campbell County, Roane, we cover Morgan some, and we cover Anderson a lot, of course, Congressman. And there's just a lot going on in the country, and we wanted to start out. Every Thursday night we'll be with a different guest, except the Congressman's going to be here for this Thursday night and next Thursday night, because we got a lot to talk about.
We sure do. Yes, Alan, it's good to be with you.
Good, thank you, Congressman. And just disclaimer, we've been friends for a long time, so we know each other very well. And we're just going to talk about things we normally would talk about when we're on the phone or in Washington or in Anderson County. Let's start with what's changed since January 1st or January 6th or January 20th, whether you do House or felon. How different is it in Washington? What do East Tennesseans want to know? What's going on?
Well, Alan, it's fundamentally changed, and let me address that. Obviously, I was much more comfortable under the Trump administration. I worked very well with former President Trump on his initiatives. At that time, we were in the minority in the House for the latter half of his first term. But we had the United States Senate. And I can't stress to our listeners and our constituents enough just how fundamentally the game has changed. And I'll be specific. We had a good run in the House. We picked up a lot of seats, but we're still a few votes short. What does that mean?
How many exactly are we down?
5 right now.
There's 5
right
more.
now.
But before there was 21 or 2, correct?
That's correct.
So we're only 5. So that gives you an optimistic look.
It does, but we're still in the minority. And
they're sticking together.
They're sticking together, so we lose every major vote in the House. With the Senate right now, it's 50-50, but as we know, under our Constitution, that means the Vice President, who is a Democrat, Kamala Harris, would be casting that tie-breaking vote, sure, as opposed to Mike Pence, who was doing it when Trump was there. And Pence cast many tie-breaking votes that were very important. The only saving grace is that we have kept the filibuster, and I thank Senators Manchin and Sinema for that. I think keeping the filibuster is very important, I think, really for the good of the Republic right now. And then the big game changer, the White House. The Biden administration has taken us in directions that are fundamentally, I think, not what we need at this time. So the Democratic Party has the House for all purposes, and the Senate with the 50-50 and the tiebreaker, and the White House. So times are difficult right now for free market capitalists like myself, conservatives like myself, but we're hanging in there, we're working hard, and we're looking forward to better times.
How many votes has Kamala Harris cast since she's been in? Do you have a rough idea of that? I know you're in the other chamber, but she's cast a few, hasn't she?
I don't recall the amount that she's cast at this point in time. Really, they haven't had to do that because on the bigger votes, they used budget reconciliation one time, so they didn't have to do that to get around the filibuster to get the 60 votes. And candidly, it bothers me, but there have been some Republicans who have joined the Democratic majority in the Senate on some key votes, and that hurts.
Okay. Everybody was kind of wrapped up last month in the whole Liz Cheney endorsement of the president. Liz Cheney's always been, I think, seen as a competent congresswoman, done a very good job in a lot of ways, but she fell ill somehow there. I mean, she just got off track and I guess basically became what's the word I want to use, felt better without the president, where most of us feel better with the president. Is that a fair assumption?
It is, and truth in advertising, being candid as I've always been with the great citizens of Anderson, Roane counties, and all of our counties, I supported President Trump then, and I support him now. We're friends. We get along very well. So I disagreed very strongly with Congresswoman Cheney's vote to impeach. Obviously, I voted against impeachment twice. The second one was an easy vote. They didn't even impanel. Nancy Pelosi did not even impanel the House Judiciary Committee.
Wow.
It was a quick rush, up and down. Respectfully, I strongly disagreed with Ms. Cheney's vote. But where it became very dicey, Alan, was she was number 3 in our leadership. And what we have in leadership, let's face it, I'm a strong policy person. I'm Tennessee's appropriator in the House.
Sure.
Bring a lot of the different initiatives to our great city in Oak Ridge with what we do with Lab Y12 and our cleanup missions and across the state. But leadership is our majority leader, who's Kevin McCarthy, is our majority whip, who is Steve Scalise. And at that point in time was Liz Cheney, who was the spokesperson for our entire conference. When you're in a leadership role, I think it is critically important, I said that, regardless of where you fall. I was pro-Trump, she was anti-Trump, okay? But the vast majority of our conference was very pro-Donald Trump, still is very pro-Donald Trump, yes. And she was not. And when she was continuing to articulate a very anti-Trump message, she was replaced by a conference vote, Republican conference vote, and Elise Stefanik from New York State is now our conference spokesperson.
She's very popular. Stefanik's very popular.
She's very popular.
She's a little more liberal than East Tennessee for a Republican, but
correct.
She's close to Donald Trump? She's close to President Trump?
Let's face it. I've known Elise since she came to the House. She came as the youngest person in the House at age 30 when she did. So she's probably about, I think, 34, 36 now. Very nice lady. But you're right, a more progressive Republican. But yes, she loves Donald Trump. She supported President Trump in all the important votes. And I think most importantly, regardless of her personal feelings, she will articulate the views and positions of the overwhelming vast majority of the Republican conference. That's very important for leadership.
Very intelligent, it would appear.
Yes.
And let me say, as long as we're talking about votes, Congressman Fleischmann, you were one of the people in this country that stood up for President Trump and voted against certifying the election. And I hear it from East Tennesseans everywhere that basically there was something wrong with the election process. It was flawed, and I think you represented us well. Some people chose not to do that, but I hear nothing but praise for you and the standing up and saying, look, it wasn't done correctly.
It wasn't done correctly. And let's take a step back and just look at the process. I'm a lawyer by profession. And Alan, like you, thank goodness I'm very well versed in political science and history. And I think that's one of the reasons that you and I have always gotten along so well. Alan and I can have some of these great obscure talks about ancient Roman history and Cincinnatus at the plow, which we all enjoy. But as a lawyer, I believe that the process has got to be fundamentally sound. And I'll be specific about that. When we have states, such as Pennsylvania, where their Supreme Court was changing the rules time and time again, albeit during COVID, but we look at the United States Constitution, If a state is going to make any fundamental changes or any changes to the electoral process, it's got to be originated from the state legislature. That's constitutional.
Yes.
That's the rules. When states willy-nilly just start changing the rules as they did, and it was not just Pennsylvania, it was other states as well in the process. Look at the state of Georgia. Outrageous. They cut a deal. Their election commissioner cut a deal with Stacey Abrams to make fundamental changes to the election before it occurred. I think that those were improper from a constitutional basis.
And they impacted the vote of the President of the United States.
Absolutely.
And the Senate, for sure.
You change the process, you change the result. And if you're going to change the process, my point is this. We want one person to cast one legal vote, and we want that to be counted one time. And more importantly, whether you're a Republican like me, or a Democrat, or an independent, a partisan or a nonpartisan, a citizen of this country, we have got to restore credibility in the system. We have lost that. Just talk to people about it. We've lost credibility in the fundamental process as to how we're elected. We've got to regain that to restore faith in our republic.
And I think legislatures across the country are trying to do that.
Correct, sir.
They're making efforts to make, have an ID to vote, different types of things, but they're getting a lot of pushback from that in certain states because they think they're trying to tighten up who can vote and restrict people from voting. And it just doesn't make sense that if you've got to have some identification to do so many different things, I mean, why would you not have one to vote? It doesn't make any sense to me. But I'm a conservative like you, and I guess it's different. But the bottom line is we want fairness. I mean, fairness is all I ask.
We want fairness, we want honesty, we want transparency. And another thing, Alan, you and I have long been strong supporters of civil rights. I used to sit and speak with some wonderful African Americans now who have passed, who told me how difficult it was when I was a young lawyer to vote in primaries in states. We can never go back to that. It's not about voter suppression. It's about making sure that every legal person can cast a vote, have one vote, and know that it will be counted and put into the tally. So that when we get to the tally, whether you're African American, Asian American, American, whatever you are, if you are legally able to vote, Latino American, able to vote, that vote will be counted. But if they want to vote people who have absolutely no right to vote, if the process is flawed, and God forbid, if there's any fraudulent activity, we as Americans, not only as elected officials, as Americans, need to stand up and say, no, this is wrong. I want an honest, transparent process.
I think I think you said it right. I think there's a fundamental lack of confidence in the system. And they made some rules that were necessary for COVID. I say necessary, maybe they weren't necessary, but we can justify that some adjustments were necessary. And the way that people voted in certain states has become overly permissive, we'll say, for that, and allowed harvesting of votes, illegal votes, different things. Are we adapting those laws to go back to pre-COVID levels where there's more restrictions on those kinds of legal activities, or are we leaving all of those COVID liberalities in place in these states? Can you tell?
Yes. In most of the states, we're actually addressing the fundamentals of the process, getting back to one legal person, one legal vote.
Right.
But let's give credit to the state of Georgia. They're extending the time for early vote. They're actually increasing voter access, or the right of voters to have more time. So that is good.
Yes.
But they want to make sure that these are legal people voting legally, and that that vote is counted correctly and tallied correctly. And until we do that, there are going to be fundamental questions with the American electorate about the sanctity of the system.
Given the votes, and let's talk about redistricting just for a second.
Yes, very good.
A little bit. So the state of Tennessee is presently redistricting, which you and I both are involved in.
Every state is.
Every state. But we just got the numbers for every state.
Yep.
2 weeks ago, a month ago, whatever, and the state's now dealing with that, and we're going to have new congressional districts for sure. We're going to have new state house. Any person, any race that impacts a vote, that has a chance of representing the people has to be redistricting. How did it change in Tennessee? Are the numbers different?
So glad you talked about redistricting, Alan, because so many of our constituents say, why is this going on? It goes back to our great United States Constitution. And remember, I want to follow the United States Constitution. That's the great document that covers our, governs our republic, sure, lays out the rules. If you go far astray from that, you're going in the wrong direction. If you stick to the United States Constitution, and I'm a strict constructionist, you will make sure that you restore faith in the system. Every 10 years, under the United States Constitution, there is a census, a counting of the people. Some states actually lose population. Other states, like Florida and Texas, gain population. What does that mean? Well, it means that as far as the United States House is concerned, which is driven by population, unlike the Senate, little Rhode Island gets 2, big Texas gets 2 senators. So a large state and a small state get 2 senators. But in the House, California is the largest state. It gets most of the members of Congress. Texas is growing. Florida is growing. To answer your question, Tennessee has 9. It will stay the same at 9.
We're going to take a break. We're already off and running with 100 subjects left to go, but we'll take a break and hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
Cash in your gold now to get the most money. With gold at all-time highs, TK Wheeler Jewelers in Oak Ridge is paying top dollar for your gold, silver, platinum, diamonds, and coins. And TK Wheeler Jewelers pays cash. Broken chains, mismatched earrings, bracelets, rings, old school rings, gold charms, old watches, and even coin collections. TK Wheeler Jewelers in Oak Ridge, where you get the most money now for your old gold. So cash in now at TK Wheeler Jewelers, 422 South Illinois Avenue in Oak Ridge.
We treat you like family at RMG. Bring your junk, cars, aluminum cans. We'll buy it on the spot and we'll pay you a lot. We treat you like family at RMG. Yeah, we treat you like family at RMG. Rome Metals will treat you like family.
Rome Metals is located just off of Highway 27 between Herman and Rockwood.
Always ready, always there. Visit NationalGuard.com to find out more.
Since the moment you were born, I've made 1,000 wishes. Wishes for your future in a world that's changing fast. Do play and laugh. Do win and lose. Do it all with confidence, kindness, and strength. And always do your best to remember that no matter what you do in this life, what matters to me is that you keep doing.
Between the Lines would like to thank Protection Strategies Incorporated for sponsoring tonight's program, one of our country's leading providers of integrated security services, including operational security, training, testing, and evaluation. Clients of PSI include the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the Department of Energy.
Ryan Spitzer, for Circuit Court Judge, is also sponsoring tonight's program. Ryan is a prosecutor and Army medic for 6 years and a lifetime Tennessean. A graduate of Vanderbilt Law School, Ryan is dedicated to serving the citizens of Anderson County.
Welcome back. We were talking about redistricting in the United States and across the state of Tennessee and how it's going to impact you as a voter. You could be in Morgan County voting for one congressman, and then next year you may be voting for a different congressman. So we're going to let Congressman Fleischmann talk some more about that process, which is dictated in the United States Constitution.
Absolutely. Every 10 years, Ellen, we have the census, basically a counting of Americans. Interestingly enough, the census is showing for the first time in decades the population has really not grown that much in the United States. So that's another interesting issue that we'll have to deal with. However, we know that certain states will lose congressional representation, lose members in the House, and others will gain.
Now, let me ask you this. That's due to migration to the southern states? Okay. In general, that's always been, the last 30 years have been kind of like that.
Absolutely.
Florida's gaining, right?
Florida's gaining, should gain 2. Texas, we thought would gain 4. They're going to gain 2. They gained 4 last time. Tennessee has stayed stable at 9. I really thought we would pick up a seat because of the tremendous amount of growth in Middle Tennessee around the Nashville area. Right. So we've had growth in the state of Tennessee. Our population has grown, but not enough to warrant an additional
But it still
seat.
alters the amount of population you need to form a congressional district, even if you don't get a new one.
Exactly. Right. And that's what I want to focus on, because in our great state, and I love Tennessee, our state legislature decides how to draw the lines. And that's not the case in all states. In some states, we've had their Supreme Courts draw the lines. In other states, there are these quote-unquote independent boards, which I don't think are all that independent, but they draw the lines. But in our
the board
state,
depends on who appoints the boards.
There you go. That's right. But in our state, it's very important that our governor, our lieutenant governor, who's the head of our state senate, and the speaker of our state house will get together, look at a map, get those maps approved by the legislature, and then we will find out. And you hit it on the head. I represent 11 wonderful East Tennessee counties. I love them all. When I went to Congress, when I was elected in 2010, the district was slightly different.
Yeah, it went kind of to an hourglass, and at that time it was more of a bell. Yeah.
So the question is, what will happen? So I'm in the 3rd district of Tennessee. They tell us I'm going to, based on all the other population in the state, have to pick up some additional voters. They tell me that Congressman Burchett in the 2nd district is actually going to have to lose some population, and Congressman Harshberger in the 1st district, which is primarily centered in the Tri-Cities, but will have to really gain a lot of population. So it's going to be interesting to see where it lands.
And do we have any general idea of these numbers? Is Congressman Burchett's district over by 10,000 or 40,000 or 5,000? Do we know?
I think he's told me that it's about 40,000. We've seen tremendous growth in the Knoxville area and Knox County and then the surrounding counties there. But take a look at our part of the state in Hamilton County. Hamilton County and Bradley County have grown, but it is not anywhere near the magnitude of where we've seen in Middle Tennessee. Congressman Cooper told me the other day, he says, Chuck, if you can imagine Nashville and its suburbs growing the size of 10 Chattanoogas in the last decade, tremendous growth in Middle Tennessee.
And there was, when I was working in government, they tried everything in Rutherford County to slow down growth in some of the other big counties. They put wheel taxes, property tax. It just, it's flat, it's central, it has within 500 miles a half the population, and it just grew so fast in all those big counties that there's nothing they can do to stop it. But I think from a political viewpoint, it's interesting because if the urban areas are growing and the smaller rural counties are losing population, attrition, could that mean that the state of Tennessee will move more to the Democratic side or more to the progressive side over time?
It's another excellent question. What we've seen in Georgia, which was usually a reliable red Republican state, is a change. And that change largely came because of Atlanta and its surrounding suburbs. The suburbs traditionally had been more Republican, but due to people coming into that state, and we're seeing some of that in Tennessee, certainly not to the magnitude that we saw in Georgia, but people, when they come from different parts of the country, generally bring the values that they had. Now, I would certainly sit down with our friends from the North and the far West and say, look, we don't want your high taxes, we don't want your high regulations, we don't want your bureaucracy and the like, but let's hope that they see the light when they come here. But yes, can there be changes? Sure. We have seen in our cities, whether it is in Knoxville or in Chattanooga, we've seen city councils and the like that are being elected that are a little bit more progressive than they were a decade or two ago. So we'll have to play for that.
And progressive is generous.
Yes, that's right. I'm being kind and I'm euphemizing a little bit.
I do it all the time.
But But I will say this, and our listeners know, I'm a conservative Republican. I support President Trump. I support our strong free market agenda, strong on Second Amendment, strong pro-life. But I consistently, and I'm thankful for this, in general elections, have tallies that show big Republican wins, big wins with independents, and big wins with Democrats who might disagree and do disagree with my philosophy, but they tell me, look, Chuck, you're hardworking, you're honest, you bring things to our district and to our state that no one else can or has. So I enjoy tremendous bipartisan support, and it shows in general elections where I carry some of these counties by 80+%. Right. It's wonderful.
That's right. And we'll go back to that in next week when we talk a little bit about what's going on in the region. I want to stick with some federal issues here. A lot of us in East Tennessee are very conservative culturally and socially, whether it be abortion, trying to eliminate abortion, and I'm speaking for a majority, not everyone, but and then we have other issues that are very important to us. Socially.
Second Amendment.
Second Amendment's very important to us, and Tennessee is taking some no licensing, rights to carry guns. Governor Lee and others have done a good job in protecting Second Amendment rights. There's no question about that. But there are other issues, too, that affect us in gender areas and other areas, that going to school, funding schools, education, what's required in education. How has that changed in the Biden administration? We know what their platform was. We know President Trump was supported conservative social causes. What do you see? I see in the Senate a couple of weeks ago, a lot of things are changing. They're pushing, now we got to go to liberal, not progressive agendas, but they're pushing liberal agendas that impact our way of life. What can you tell me? What can you tell the people of East Tennessee what's going on?
It's a great question, Alan, and fundamentally the world has changed for us in Washington, D.C. There could not have been a more stark contrast between what the Trump administration did and was doing, which I supported and still support, and what the Biden administration has started to do and wants to do. And I could not disagree more with where the Biden administration is taking the country. And I'm going to give you some specifics. Let's take a look at any sense of fiscal responsibility. We can deal with the social issues, and we should later. In a very short period of time, the Biden administration has wanted to spend not billions, but trillions of dollars in COVID relief, in their infrastructure bill. Everything that they touch, they want to spend trillions of dollars. There's a problem with that. Fundamentally, we are very deeply in debt. I'll be specific again. When I went to Congress, we as a nation were $15 trillion in debt in terms of our national debt. Right now, we are $30 trillion. That's double in 10 years.
Some of that debt grew in the Republican control as well as Democrats, to be fair.
Right, and some of the debt, and that is not necessarily a Republican or Democratic issue. That's the fact that mandatory spending programs, 10,000 people a day, are going on the rolls of Social Security and Medicare. That's a function.
A population shift.
That's a population shift. So I don't want to point a finger at an R or a D and say bad, bad, bad. But I will say this: we need to get a hold of that so that young people like your wonderful son, who are receiving the debt on their backs, that will affect their livelihoods for the rest of their lives. You and I are a little bit more senior in age, but we have younger children, and we don't want to burden them with that. But the Biden administration, in every area, they want to cut defense and increase social spending. Well, that is completely different from what we saw under Trump, and I think it's a step in the wrong direction.
Well, we've seen the chaos worldwide of the weakness of our international system. That's subjective for me, but it seems to me like the respect for the United States, whether it be fear or whether it be respect, is evaporating, that people are doing what they want to do. You didn't see that under President Trump.
That's correct. There's no question it has waned under President Biden. He is going to be having a meeting with Putin and the Russians, but What I liked about President Trump stood up for America first, whether it was America domestic policy in terms of manufacturing and jobs, or almost more importantly, on a foreign policy platform. Trump could stand in a room and leaders knew that he stood for the United States of America and an American foreign policy, not a global foreign policy. And again, Joe Biden's president, I don't care for that, but he is putting forth a globalistic foreign policy. I mean, candidly, I don't care what the other leaders of the world think about us. I want us to lead for us. I want to have friends. I don't want to be unduly adversarial and be peaceful. But America-led. Ellen, I don't know how many world leaders I sat with. I'll be specific. In Poland, in the Ukraine, in Egypt. I mean, with the heads of these countries. In Jordan, in Hungary. Israel. And these world leaders said, thank you for President Trump having America lead the world again. You're the bastion of democracy. You're the bastion of freedom. You're the bastion of hope in this world. We need America to lead. We're not doing that anymore.
It's interesting. I saw something from Roger Daltrey of The Who, the rock and roll, and he came out and he says, this whole generation's wrong. We've tried the communist thing. We've tried the cancel culture. It doesn't work. The freedoms that we have are due, the very 60s opposite, of the next generation. He's turned and he said, look, everything we're trying to do is not working. It's not going to work. But I want to say this. We talk history. The Soviet Union from 1920, as brutal as it was, to 1980, we'll say, 60, 70 years, basically kept control of a multi-ethnic region and had strict disciplinary rules. Everybody for the state, everybody for the Soviet Union, and they eventually collapsed.
The evil empire collapsed because the United States stood up to them with Ronald Reagan and George Bush. Bush won.
And the Pope. Yeah, there was 3 or 4 in there. But you know what?
That's right.
But you know what? If you read Casey's book, but you know what? The minute it fell apart, everybody went back to the civil wars they'd had 80 years ago. They hadn't forgotten their ethnic problems. And that's my point on global. It's always going to be A, B, C, D, E, F, trying to figure a way to get along. We can't make everybody G. It doesn't work. In other words, people are going to fight, and they're going to go back to their primordial beliefs, no matter what kind of government you put up.
Well, it's interesting you say that. And if you recall, from when the Russian Revolution took place up until the dissolution of the Soviet Union, if you'd have told me in 1980, when Ronald Reagan talked about there someday not being a Soviet Union, most people in America would have said, no, it would never happen. Or the Berlin Wall coming down.
Sure.
I can remember in science fiction movies, they would talk about the Berlin Wall being taken down. Ladies and gentlemen, I've actually stood at the place where the bricks are in the road in now a unified Germany, where that wall was. And the plaque where Ronald Reagan stood and said, Mr. Gorbachev, take down that wall. That was probably one of the probably was the major event in my lifetime to see the dissolution of the Soviet Union. But now the Russian Federation under Putin...
That would be second to the Mets winning the World Series.
Well, in 1969, yes, the miracle Mets.
Go ahead.
Two miracles.
I was just saying that because I know you're a big Mets fan.
Have to
Two
say
miracles
that.
in one lifetime.
Yeah, indeed. And that miracle repeated itself in '86 against the Red Sox.
Yes.
But be that as it may, the world is changed, but Russia under Putin is a very different situation. They have tried to reemerge as a world leader, and they know that China is there as well, and we've got to address that. There is keen international competition between the United States, Russia, and China.
We'll come back to that. We're going to take another break for our sponsors, and we'll come back and finish up on impacts of Europe and all the international and global attempts by Biden and others.
We all know that real estate is location, location, location.
Our team at Just Homes Group, Realty Executives, has the true expertise, pairing buyers and sellers with the right opportunities.
Whether you're looking to buy or sell a home right here in Knoxville,
Lenoir City, Clinton, or Farragut, We have the expertise throughout every Knoxville surrounding area. Call Just Homes Group Realty Executives today.
While I was lying in an army hospital in Germany, my parents got a letter that said I had 48 hours to live. They even sent this flag to put on my coffin.
As America's veterans face challenges, DAV is there.
I left the military with a traumatic brain injury, and when I got home, I fought depression, anxiety, and alcohol, and had nothing to look forward to.
DAV provides a lifetime of support to veterans of every generation, helping more than 1 million veterans each year.
With DAV's help, my world changed 100%. I was able to build a new life for myself.
With the right support, more veterans can reach victories great and small.
I'm Adam Greathouse, Army veteran.
But there are more victories to be won.
My victory is just experiencing life.
Adam Greathouse, thank you for your service. May your victories inspire many more. Support more victories for veterans. Go to DAV.org.
Mulch & More in Midtown is your landscaping headquarters. They offer mulch, topsoil, all types of gravel, sand, rock, crab orchard stone, riprap stone, and limestone gravel. Mulch & More does light excavation work. Do you need a driveway repaired? They can do it. Plus, Mulch & More can do your water and sewer lines, French drains, and more with Ditch Witch services. So whether you only need a half cubic yard up to 20 cubic yards, Mulch & More can help you. Give Gary a call today at 865-234-7060 at Mulch & More in Midtown.
Cash in your gold now to get the most money. With gold at all-time highs, TK Wheeler Jewelers in Oak Ridge is paying top dollar for your gold, silver, platinum, diamonds, and coins. And TK Wheeler Jewelers pays cash. Broken chains, mismatched earrings, bracelets, rings, old school rings, gold charms, old watches, and even coin collections. TK Wheeler Jewelers in Oak Ridge, where you get the most money now for your old gold. So cash in now at TK Wheeler Jewelers, 422 South Illinois Avenue in Oak Ridge.
Like family at RMG. Bring your junk, cars, aluminum cans. We'll buy it on the spot and we'll pay you a lot. We treat you like family at RMG. Yeah, we treat you like family at RMG. Rome Metals Group, we treat you like family.
Rome Metals is located just off of Highway 27 between Herman and Rockwood.
I'm Andrew Saul, Commissioner of Social Security. Beware of telephone scammers pretending to be government employees. Real Social Security employees will never threaten you. Callers threatening you with arrest or other legal action and demanding money are not from us. If you receive a call like this, hang up, do not provide them with any form of payment or information. Report the call at oig.ssa.gov.
Between the Lines would like to thank Protection Strategies Incorporated for sponsoring tonight's program. One of our country's leading providers of integrated security services, including operational security, training, testing, and evaluation. Clients of PSI include the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the Department of Energy.
Ryan Spitzer, for Circuit Court Judge, is also sponsoring tonight's program. Ryan is a prosecutor and Army medic for 6 years and a lifetime Tennessean. A graduate of Vanderbilt Law School, Ryan is dedicated to serving the citizens of Anderson County.
Okay, we're back on Between the Lines talking to Congressman Fleischmann about the impact of the Biden administration and his attempts to create more global economy or a global world, and we're more pro-America, Congressman.
Well, that's true. And again, fundamental differences, and we do see that in our elections, in our political parties, in our national leaders. And sadly, when an election doesn't work out well, or when an election cycle doesn't work out well, and you have somebody who prevails and is in that role, you've got to deal with it. It has consequences, but I have been so disheartened. The policies on the border have been a failure. That also has international consequences. Other countries saying, my gosh, the United States again has porous borders and can't deal with its immigration policy.
Let's stay on immigration.
Sure.
How's it changed? You've been down. You were just down at the border a month or two ago.
I had been to the border on Air Force One with President Trump to Calexico. For our listeners, I am the ranking member, highest Republican on the Homeland Security Appropriations Subcommittee. So we fund the wall, we fund border security, CBP, ICE, as well as the other great things in that portfolio. Coast Guard, Secret Service, all these TSA. But the border and that entire situation, talking straight up, was so much better under President Trump. We wanted to curb illegal immigration, and we wanted to do something else. Secure the border to protect the United States of America. Neither of that is going on right now. It's porous. We're being overrun. It's a failure at so many different levels, and it's sad.
And unbelievable. More people coming in the United States illegally today than a year ago?
Absolutely. And we don't know where they're going, how they're going. The system, I referred to it as a series of crises. Now, we couldn't get President Biden to say it was a crisis at first. Could not get the mainstream media to address it as a crisis. Again, two different ways of covering President Trump versus President Biden. I wish the media would have given poor President Trump a tenth of the support that they give the Biden agenda. It's amazing. And they would just hit Trump on anything. Even when he would do so well, they would just hit him and hit him and hit him. Thought it was rather unfair. On this border crisis, I would have expected at least the media to be objective as to the magnitude of the crisis it is. It's a crisis at several levels. We're seeing, first of all, it's a humanitarian crisis.
Sure.
These children and people who are coming through are being abused by the people who are bringing them here, whether they're coyotes or cartels. But once they get here, the cost to the American taxpayer and the cost of these communities where they're just allowing these migrants to just go and go off into the country. I don't think we will ever be able to address that. There are millions and millions of people in this country illegally. Now, let's face it, I'm the biggest fan of legal, proper immigration in this country.
Sure.
Our grandparents came to this country from Italy, from Austria, Hungary, Germany. From England, yes, and they did it the right way. It's being done the wrong way now. It's bad for the migrants. It's bad for our country. It's bad for the taxpayer.
Walk me through it, though. I mean, okay, so they come over. And they come across the border in Texas. Okay. And they get her now.
Some get
how do they get to L.A. or Chattanooga or Miami or wherever?
It's an excellent question. Well, first of all, there are some who come in who are not apprehended. You can't catch everyone. That's the problem. That was the good thing about the wall. The wall was slowing them down. It was not just a barrier, it was a slowdown. It gave the Border Patrol the opportunity to catch more of the people. So you've got some people coming in who just don't get caught. Of the ones who are apprehended, then if they are minors, there is a federal court ruling out there that says within 72 hours they have got to be released. So that causes a problem. I think that's bad for the poor migrants. It's bad for the system.
Released to who?
Well, that's the problem. They basically release them and they into the care sometimes of nonprofits in this country. They actually flew these kids into Chattanooga, for example, in the middle of the night. We didn't even know about it until we saw it on the radio, or saw it on TV and heard about it on the radio. So it's going on all over the United States, and it's not going to stop until the American people. So the
children under 18 years of age or 16 or whatever are under state care of some type.
Well, that is correct. And let's take it a step further. There is a federal law in place that says when and if these migrant children, now we're not dealing with the adults. The adults who are coming in, that's another problem, who are illegals. But these migrant children, when they come in, there is a federal statute that says the local community has got to pay to educate these students. So what is that going to mean for our local taxpayers? Obviously, they're going to have to accommodate the language requests, the costs, and the like. It's a tremendous cost to the judicial system all along. These people are given report back dates, the adults. Over 98% of them never even show up for their court date. They just disappear into the United States until, God forbid, they commit a crime or something like that. And how many illegals are committing crimes in the United States? It's staggering. Unfortunate.
How many miles of wall are there?
Hundreds of miles of wall.
I think I saw a number 435 or something.
Yes, and President Trump did fortunately build wall. President Biden, contrary to law that was passed in this country, stopped building the wall. He just said, I'm going to stop doing that. Well, how do you do that when you've got a federal budget passed that was signed by the last president and us for this fiscal year, for fiscal 2021. Now he said he's going to start construction again. I'll believe it when I see it.
How many miles are necessary to make the wall effective all across the southern border?
Again, it depends where you are. In certain areas, and I've been to the wall in Texas, I've been to the wall in New Mexico, I've been to the wall in California. It is effective and it works. In certain areas where there is a river, for example, or a mountain or some natural terrain.
Land barriers, sure.
Land barriers. It's not going to be as effective, and we're not going to build wall there. We're using and employing a lot of other technologies, which are very good, and which I have worked to fund and finance through the Homeland Security Appropriations Subcommittee on Homeland. What that means is we're taking technology, whether that's towers, mobile technologies that we can use to detect illegals coming into this country so that they can be properly apprehended.
What's the impact on the defense industry? What's the impact on our soldiers? Not the veterans that have retired. That's another story to deal with. But are we still funding at the same levels we were? I know we haven't had a lot of time here in 6 months, but are we seeing any changes in the way that our defense is deployed across the world?
Well, yes. And let me take a step back, because I don't want to blame the Biden administration for everything. There's enough I can blame them for, but I will never blame them for something that is not their fault. We made a decision years ago, the United States of America. We used to be able to handle for our defense, and this was about a decade ago, 2.5 major events. What I mean by that is, if there were hostilities in a certain part of the world, that the United States could handle 2.5 of these based on our military preparedness. Now we can handle one. Okay, so we are funded and structured to be able to handle one major problem. Thank God we have not had more than one. We've had hostilities in the Middle East and the like. So what we've done as a nation is we've made the fundamental decision, I think wrongfully, to only be able to handle one major problem if it occurs. God forbid there's two. What do? How do you ramp up? It's very difficult to ramp up. Now, to President Trump's credit, when we had troops that didn't have proper munitions, didn't have proper gear, didn't have proper training, we worked with President Trump and the Trump administration in Congress in a bipartisan way to increase military spending. And we did that. Now, under the Biden administration, let me put some fault there, they are looking to decrease that spending and increase other domestic spending. I think that's a step in the wrong direction.
Pretty traditional that's been the MO of the Democratic Party for
absolutely.
Decades,
Republicans want to increase this. You're absolutely right. Increase defense spending, limit domestic spending. Democrats want to increase domestic spending and decrease military spending. And that is a fundamental difference between most of the members of both parties. Not always. There used to be a time in America where Republicans and Americans did agree on military policy and foreign policy. They were together. I wish we could return to that, but we are bitterly divided on that issue.
COVID.
Yes.
You have access and you have information more than we do. You know, you study these things. we talk about variants, we talk about the changes. Are we past it?
No. We're
past the crisis level.
Past the
Masks,
major crisis.
seclusions,
yes.
Empty Yankee Stadium, that kind of thing.
Absolutely, and let's hope and pray it stays that way. I'll tell you, if you wish, how I came to know about COVID. I was actually out in Omaha, Nebraska.
You've told that story, but I'd like you to tell the people.
To our folks.
Yep.
As you know, I travel around the nation, I travel around the world, representing the great people of the great state of Tennessee. I love Tennessee, I love Tennesseans, and I represent Tennesseans in the United States House. I happen to be out in Omaha because out there they have something called STRATCOM.
Yeah.
And our veterans would know what STRATCOM is, but for our listeners, that's where we actually have the nuclear triad run out of. It's actually out of an Air Force base out there. And I was meeting with them. And they came to me afterwards and they said, Congressman, would you mind sitting down? And this was in February of
2020.
Of 2020. That's correct. And they said, would you sit down with these infectious disease doctors and want to talk to you about something? And I said, absolutely. And they said, it's of national importance. And these doctors sat and talked with us about this thing that was coming. They said, it could be a pandemic. It's called COVID. It started in China. And it's not good. Well, how did we know it was not good? Because Omaha, Nebraska was one of the first locations to start taking those cruise ship patients, if you recall, who had been impacted by COVID and were on ships. So they took them in. They said this is going to be bad. It could go across the nation. Now, some of the projections, and I will not demean anybody who has died or has suffered with COVID. I had it. I got through it, thank God. But we've lost a lot of people. But the initial projections, Alan, were potentially staggering. They told me possibly as much as 1% of the United States population, 2 or 3%, if it got really, really bad.
Those are mortality rates?
Yes.
Okay.
That's right. And because they didn't know. What we saw, though, they were right about everything with one exception. They said in the beginning it was going to go up, go away for a while in 2020, and then shoot up again in the fall. Well, what happened was it never really went away, and it did shoot up in the fall. So now we're in a much better place. There's no question. With the vaccinations, give the federal government, President Trump, and Congress, both parties, we work together to get these 3 vaccines out there so that any American who wanted that vaccine could have that. Now we're sharing it with the world. The rest of the world claimed to be making that progress, but it was American ingenuity, American know-how that, as it has historically, gotten it done, not only for this country, but for the world. Our infection rate is smaller. I'm glad we're not having to wear masks anymore. Let's just hope and pray that we don't see mutations or variants that continue to plague certain parts of the world. For example, India has just been clobbered of late. So we're not totally out of the woods, but let's hope we get there and not see it ever come back with the vengeance that we had.
I appreciate you coming on tonight. I appreciate everything you've done, and we're going to bring you back next Thursday. You're going to be coming back through Oak Ridge. We'll get you in here again. We're going to talk about what's going on in the East Tennessee area, not just national issues, but where we're at. And I mean, energy budget's big here. We got other federal issues and other issues, and I want to talk a little bit about the 2nd District in Knoxville and what's going on with Tennessee and what's going on with some of those areas. And I can't emphasize to the public how important Congressman Fleischmann is to all of Tennessee as an appropriator and as just your influence. I mean, Democrats, Republicans, you hear it. You watched a hearing last month where it was just praise from both sides on his knowledge of the issues, and we're so fortunate to have him representing us here.
Well, thank you, Ellen. I appreciate that. I love my job. I love the people I represent. When I was a lawyer, I said, if you represent good clients, you'll get good results. When you're a member of Congress, if you represent great people, and I represent great people in the great state of Tennessee, it's a lot easier to do my job. But I'm passionate about that. I'm civil. I'll be candid. Yes, I disagree with the Democrats, but I think civility is very important. And I've been able to gain, as you said, the respect on both sides of the aisle as a person who understands policy, who tries to understand people, who tries to work towards solutions, and I try not to be divisive in my demeanor.
I appreciate it. That's all we have for tonight. Thank you for watching the initial episode of Between the Lines. We're going to have a lot of interesting people on in the next 8 weeks. Thank you so much.
Between the Lines would like to thank Protection Strategies Incorporated for sponsoring tonight's program, one of our country's leading providers of integrated security services, including operational security, training, testing, and evaluation. Clients of PSI include the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the Department of Energy.
Ryan Spitzer, for Circuit Court Judge, is also sponsoring tonight's program. Ryan is a prosecutor and Army medic for 6 years and a lifetime Tennessean. A graduate of Vanderbilt Law School, Ryan is dedicated to serving the citizens of Anderson County.
Unlike other health concerns, mental illness is not always easy to see.
Third line, please.
DEPRESSION.
Mental illness doesn't show up on a scale. Bipolar? Sorting out a mental health concern is not something to attempt on your own.
Anxiety. I thought so.
Like many health conditions, help for mental illness takes professional diagnosis and treatment. And the sooner you seek treatment, the better.
Look at that. 6,000 steps and PTSD.
If you or a loved one has a mental health concern, don't go it alone. Find out what to do. For 24-hour free and confidential information and treatment referral, call 1-800-662-HELP. Learn more at samhsa.gov/support.
What if one day you went to that secret place, that spot that only you know about, and instead of what you came for, you found this? What would you do? Would you stop and give it some thought? The truth is, all drug use comes with risk. Before those risks become real, before drugs turn your life upside down, before drugs take their toll on you and your family, know that there is help. You can quit. If you or someone you love is struggling with drug use or prescription drug misuse, call 1-800-662-HELP for 24-hour free and confidential information and treatment referral. Or go to samhsa.gov/knowtherisks.
We treat you like family at RMG. Bring your junk, cars, aluminum cans. We buy it on the spot and we pay you a lot. We treat you like family at RMG. Yeah, we treat you like family at RMG. Rome Metals, we treat you like family.
Rome Metals is located just off of Highway 27 between Herman and Rockwood.
Mulch & More in Midtown is your landscaping headquarters. They offer mulch, topsoil, all types of gravel, sand, rock, crab orchard stone, riprap stone, and limestone gravel. Mulch & More does light excavation work. Do you need a driveway repaired? They can do it. Plus, Mulch & More can do your water and sewer lines, French drains, and more with Ditch Witch services. So whether you only need a half cubic yard up to 20 cubic yards, Mulch & More can help you. Give Gary a call today at 865-234-7060 at Mulch & More in Midtown.
Cash in your gold now to get the most money. With gold at all-time highs, TK Wheeler Jewelers in Oak Ridge is paying top dollar for your gold, silver, platinum, diamonds, and coins. And TK Wheeler Jewelers pays cash. Broken chains, mismatched earrings, bracelets, rings, old school rings, gold charms, old watches, and even coin collections. TK Wheeler Jewelers in Oak Ridge, where you get the most money now for your old gold. So cash in now at TK Wheeler Jewelers, 422 South Illinois Avenue in Oak Ridge.
We all know that real estate is location, location, location.
Our team at Just Homes Group, Realty Executives, has the true expertise, pairing buyers and sellers with the right opportunities.
Whether you're looking to buy or sell a home right here in Knoxville,
Lenoir City, Clinton, or Farragut, we have the expertise throughout every Knoxville surrounding area. Call Just Homes Group Realty Executives today.
At Social Security, we are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. A My Social Security account allows you to access your earnings history and benefits information, request a replacement Social Security card, get a proof of income letter, estimate and apply for benefits, and more. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security. Securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
NationalGuard.com to find out more.